So yeah, today we're talking about like beginners tips with deployment and things, and we've got two forces set up. We've got combined army on the blue side, and we've got assassins on the red side. I think we're going to talk about deploying with a view to playing the mission. So we've got some objectives in the middle for like supplies or something like that. I think,
Exactly.
right. And then I think we might also talk about deploying more aggressively for a mission like, I don't know, Firefight or Annihilation or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah,
Cool.
there are some considerations that come with the mission.
Sure.
So we are now assuming that on this map that some of you played as a frontline map in RAL. We just placed three consoles, and
Hmm.
this map is pretty simple when it comes to like lines of fire and buildings and navigating. So I use it as an example.
Hmm.
So in this instance, we assume like the assassin player won the initiative and like the lieutenant role and chosen deployment.
Hmm.
And why would he have chosen deployment? Because the red side controls all the consoles.
So, what is it like about the console's position with respect to the red side that makes it so dominant? Like, why would you say that?
Mm. Uh, um, because you see all of them, so the opponent is required to use small correct clips or
Hmm.
some or just shoot through your guys to
Right.
go to the consoles and
Hmm.
retrieve the objects.
Hmm.
And the whole mission is about retrieving the objects from the consoles and
Sure.
controlling them.
Hmm. So you can get solid
So
sightlines on all of the objectives, which obviously gives the red side an advantage because you can choose to set up AROs if you wish.
yes, exactly.
I also,
Also, this building
yeah,
is positioned greatly to allow you to actually deploy somebody there to snatch and control two consoles
right.
in a softer way.
So if we're looking at things like forward deploying units, any building that kind of blocks line of sight that we can deploy behind is hugely advantageous. So that building that you highlighted in the middle is really good for the red side.
Yes.
And to a lesser extent, there's the building on the right as well. It's not quite as blocky, but there's some angles you can take there. So that kind of makes red side seem quite cool.
Mm-hmm. Also, there are like those long, deep lanes that lead through here,
Hmm.
which seem like you can take advantage with like long range weapon set up defensively there.
Hmm.
And you can even advance through here and like play control over on this
Hmm.
console, this console, maybe put somebody there. So from this position, there is plenty of
Hmm.
advance, and you still can survive the thing
Hmm.
that is attacking you.
Right, so if I remember correctly, when you played this map the other day, I believe your Pano opponent put a sniper in this area because of those really long sight lines.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there are long sightlines from here, but they are broken by this building, so you can actually creep on the sniper, so you have to protect him
Sure,
somewhat from this angle.
sure.
But assuming that the assassin player won the initiative and chosen the deployment, this means that Shazvasti player would be deploying first on this side,
Hmm.
because that would be the choice of the assassin player. And the Shazvasti most likely, since there is like, I don't think there is a very clear advantage in supplies to being first or second, and if you are already forced to be in the quote unquote worst deployment zone, then you may as well go first.
Right, right.
Uh, because the supplies can be played both ways. Like you can control the tempo, and then if you have good tools for it, so like AD or like infiltrators or impersonators, you can just jump the guy that is controlling the box in the last turn
Right, yeah. So
and snatch it.
so supplies is a
Or
mission that has compelling reasons to play first or second. Right.
it depends on what your army is good at.
Hmm.
So if you are better at just rolling out and then controlling the middle, but advancing from your deployment zone, then I think it's better to go first, because then you can actually roll out, click the consoles, and then retreat to safety
That
and
makes
make your
sense.
opponent just go through all your aero pieces. And
S-
if you are like Shazvasti or Assassins or Hakislam, then you may as well go first or second.
Cool.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about deployment. Let's assume that the Shasvasti player was deploying first with the intention of attacking, and he is deployed pretty badly. So we'll talk about what are the units, and then we'll just think about what they are trying to achieve in this first turn, and like if they maybe want to be not activated at all, and then we'll talk about what they want to achieve in the bottom of the first turn and
cool.
later. So the Shasvasti player has, I think, 4 Taigas. So there is a line of Taigas up the front. 1, 2, 3, 4 Taigas. Then there is
there's one there. Yeah. Nice.
Then there are 2 camo tokens up front. One is on the rooftop. One is like in a pretty advanced position. There's HVT. There is a Q drone on the rooftop with a slave drone prone behind it. The slave drone is attached to Dr. Worm, who is on the other flank, prone, protected by this Ika drone. Then in the middle there is Haris of Guaylo HRL with MSV2, Victor Messer and Shishkin, who is most likely the lieutenant. Guaylo can also be the lieutenant, but most likely Shishkin, because Guaylo will do most of the work here. And then there is an R drone, which is a flash boost bot, and then there is another specialist in the form of just a specialist bot, the M drone, which is like your forward observer.
Okay, so just to talk about like the roles of the pieces here, the Tigers are usually your kind of like forward attack pieces with their quick movement and stuff, I'm guessing?
Yes. So the Tigers are, what I'm using Tigers for is actually defense. So they are a good offensive piece, but for if you are going second, then you want your the entrance to your deployment zone be protected by the Tigers, because you don't care about looting them.
So would you say
instance, they just want to advance?
So I was just going to ask, would you say that like you can use your Tigers in deployment to kind of stop opponents from taking certain routes because they project a threat?
Yes, exactly. And Tigers are a special warband piece with Sixth Sense, so they are great protecting different angles from like armor deployment and people advancing through there.
Okay.
So let's let's start with maybe the bigger pieces, because let's talk about like the strategy, what the army wants to achieve this turn, and then let's think about how they should be deployed. So this Q drone is a defensive piece. He can be used offensively, but there is no Evo hacker in the list, so he will not be boosted. So he's not really to be used as an offensive piece. And he's deployed in a very precarious position. He sees a lot of the table. He sees one console, he sees approach of the console, but he can also be seen by a lot. And I think that's a mistake in this position. He just sees too much. Because if you can see, like, there are already the camo tokens deployed, and if this camo token were to move just to here, you'll also see it. So assuming these are dynamis, they can even be coordinated to take just coordinated fire against this guy. Yes?
So I was just going to say, it seems like the mistake that's being made with this Q drain here is that whilst it does want to be defensive, it just covers too much of the board. It's too exposed.
Exactly. So what you want with your Q drone in this position is you want to have a safe spot to fall back to and be protected. So I would swap this Q drone with this R drone. And if you think about it, this Q drone here would not protect any consoles, but it is not his job to protect the consoles, because you are going to go to the consoles and you need to fight through the consoles and pick the stuff from them, because you are the first player.
So you're saying
the Q drone is there to protect your other guys.
Okay, so because Shasvasti is playing first, you don't need to take such an exposed position with this ARO piece, because hopefully, fingers crossed, you're going to be grabbing some of those supplies anyway. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Yes, like if you are certain that you will remove any threats that can attack your Q drone, then yes, you can deploy him in such a way, and just assume you will not spend another and just be a nuisance for your opponent. Uh, but uh, but in this instance, I think like the safest spot would be to actually swap him with the R drone, and maybe think about deploying him like here in the middle, because he can then see this corner, which is above 16, which is good. And also he can see this corner. Yeah. And the R drone, this is not a good position for the R drone. So the R drone can be used either for hacking through like a repeater. So you have a hacker, so you can use it as a repeater, and then you want him deployed prone in cover. But the main purpose also of the flash pulse bot is as always flash pulsing.
Right.
And the way to gain the most out of your flash pulse bots is actually to have as many negative mods both for you and your opponent as you can. So I think the best spot for this bot would be like here.
Right.
Because it doubles up the job that the Q drone has. It will be the first bot that will be seen, and you care much less about it. And it will see both this corner, and even this console.
Right.
And you can even see like this rooftop.
And this is useful because I guess you can say because this Q drone and the R drone can. Sorry, I meant the R drone can see that console over on the right. It means that you can grab the middle one yourself and then cover the right hand side with your ARO pieces.
Yes.
Right. So just to quickly give context to this discussion, Perzan and I were talking the other day, and like mathematically, the best thing for an ARO piece to do if you want to waste the opponent's time is to make sure that the opponent is on as many negative modifiers as possible, even if you're on negative modifiers yourself. So a flash pulse bot at the back of the board will mathematically sometimes, fingers crossed, hopefully, waste more of the opponent's time than a flash pulse that's like further up. Obviously, dice are dice, and sometimes that's not the way things happen, but you know.
Yes, like one consideration with this add-on is maybe whether you want to deploy him at his maximum range or maybe in cover. I think if it this distance of 4 inches and you are not sure of the distance here and here, then I would rather grab cover, because that's a certain -3 modifier,
Right.
instead of in place of like either you will get it or not. And like from here, like this is still a sniper range, so
Sure.
it doesn't matter if you are here or here,
Right,
but you want to have
sense.
cover. Okay, so we have our hard ARO piece deployed. This is not a hard ARO piece. This is actually an attack piece that can be an ARO piece, but this Harris is actually an attack piece. Now, maybe you have seen that I removed the slave drone with the Q drone because that's his job. And if you establish that we might ignore this console because we are protecting it from here, and maybe quite easily with the Taigas later, then we should focus on like grabbing from this console or maybe the middle console.
Right.
So our specialists for the job should be on this flank. So this Harris is deployed sort of all right. Also, this building blocks a lot of lines of fire, but it's deployed not optimally, definitely.
Okay.
Like this Guile is in the middle, like in the middle of nowhere, but it has nanoscreen, so basically it could be deployed as in such a spot if it were to have an aero position, and if it was like the only position that was like the best position there is because of ranges and visibility. But there is no reason to deploy him like this if you are going first, because then you risk like starting in line of fire of many other guys in the first order, and be forced to actually spend order on him and being the link leader.
Right,
Where
because then he
you
has
might
to face
not
to
want
face,
to,
right?
yes, or dodge, and you don't want to
Right.
dodge in your active turn if you can help it.
That makes sense.
So thinking of attack vectors for this list, like this looks alright, but those rooftops, if you have, remember, you are deploying to the empty board, so you don't know what your opponent has. But you have to consider those rooftops for like infiltrating snipers or like even Dailamis or like rockets or somebody else.
Sure.
And you cannot just willy-nilly just go in there and assume you will be fine. So you can either start by deploying like at least prone or behind cover so that you are not forced to go there, because you can at least like cautious move around. Or you want to like deploy here and approach through this building or around, like have some options, not be close to it.
So, I guess what I hear you say is that even if you do have the first turn, that doesn't mean it's a good excuse to expose all of your pieces, because you don't want to end up staring down the barrel of an ARO piece and having to waste loads of orders dealing with that.
Yes. So what I would do right now is I would actually swap this this Harris position and put it on the left flank more, and the engineer, like doctor, like more centrally, because that's a good protected spot. And even if this guy bites it, he can still like go here and pick them up.
Right.
Maybe you can consider there is not enough room on the roof to keep him on the rooftop. But if it was maybe a larger rooftop, then maybe putting the medtech here and the slave drone there.
Sure.
Alternatively, you could maybe deploy the doctor up front, like in anticipation of you going there and needing to pick them up. But that's just pessimistic, so don't do it.
Right, but you obviously want to deploy your doctors and engineers in a position where they're ready to pick things up that you like expect will go down.
Well, first and foremost, you want them safe. So you want them tucked away and not exposing to anything. Now, let's talk a bit about this Dr. Worm, because he can be seen from here, which is protected by those two guys, so that's fine. But definitely he should be prone, and I think he should be also facing the other way, just because there is a very hard to attack him from here with any model that is S2.
Right.
And he can actually then see models approaching from here, and there are some models that may approach it from there.
Right, so you often see quite experienced players leave troops in their deployment zone facing backwards. Can you just like talk a little bit about that, what the point of that is?
Okay, so there are certain armies that can actually have troopers walking through the deployment zone, like Combined Army, Ariadna, and Nomads. But then any other army also can drop an airborne deployment troop using like like the physical role, just airborne dropping.
Right.
And having it airborne dropped, even if it's within 8 inches, so you get to dodge, having the airdrop like here is a pain.
Right. So
you want to cover your 6 with those models that are not actually protecting your DZ. Right. They want to protect the protectors of your DZ.
So there are ways for people to drop models into your deployment zone, and it's important to have models that are looking backwards that basically just deter this, make it much harder to do.
Exactly. Yeah, Camo has 362, that's a good point.
That's a good point. And the TR bots obviously have 360 as well, right?
Yeah, of course. But like this is a bit maybe a paranoid, but I think that's a good That's a good practice.
Yeah.
So let's think about the Harris. So I think I want Victor Messer T safe, but if you think about it, if he starts here, and you advance with the Harris, then he will need to go either here or here and expose himself possibly to like long range arrows, and he has like boarding shotgun.
Right.
So you actually, for the attacking Harris, you want them tucked away nice and close together, so that maybe not like as close as I'm deploying, but this spot is pretty limited. You might want to deploy them like maybe here, so that, yeah.
Right. So
Let's look.
Sheskin still can't be seen from too many areas, so she's reasonably safe.
Yes,
Reasonably.
but like I am still paranoid of
Yeah.
this rooftop.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have like a camo infiltrating, Tio camo sniper that has infiltration,
Right.
not many armies have it, but like even this Delamy can be deployed here, and
Sure.
she will be seen from there.
Right. So
And you don't
yeah.
want to
So there are a lot of
activate
armies
a
that
carry from the other guy.
yeah. So there are a lot of armies that can punish things like this. So like Nomads have hidden deployment snipers, and I think Hack Islam obviously has like various hidden deployed units.
Yeah, the Nadir.
Combined has
So
hidden deployed as well. So
yeah.
yeah.
So why I'm not considering the rooftop? You might ask. Like this guy is fine here. We can even deploy maybe Shishkin like here, and then Victor safe here. So then I can safely advance with this guy. You would think. But this is actually might be disastrous because then if you activate the Harris, you are forced to activate this guy because there will be possible arrows because the opponent will be deploying against you. So this link team might be deployed here to actually look at you if you just stand up. So this guy would be safe, but the Shishkin could eat this Panzerfaust. So as you can see, for attacking Harris, you don't want to spread out. You want them tucked neatly close together. Like there is always a consideration of a missile or a blast. So when you are like actually advancing, don't want to expose more than one of the guys within 2 inches of each other. But that's like a technicality. So deployment-wise, you want the attacking Harris close. And this guy could maybe start here still because he wants to be the one taking face-to-face rolls at this range. He has the albedo, he has the
nanoscreen and stuff.
the MSV, nanoscreen, so he can take them, but he's not invincible.
So you don't want to deploy in such a way that too many members of your fire team can be seen, because obviously, you know, you can only face to face with one of them, I guess, unless they're all dodgy. Unless they're dodge.
Yeah. Now this position is a bit too on the left for my liking. It forces me to go here and not here. But on the other hand, if you can just park them here and be ready to pounce, that's still fine. What I don't like about this approach is like forcing me to go on this building, which looks very exposed, but all of those models have nanoscreen. So for this particular Harris, that's still all right.
Okay.
I think for the most part, I would prefer to advance on the ground. So maybe consider something like this.
Yeah. So I think it's.
But then there's like little things to do with the method. So I think that should be something like this for the deployment, and then you are. But then you are still forced to activate Guaylo, but the other guy can just stay there prone.
Yeah.
And not too much. And another consideration, deploy all of them prone. If you are going first and you are intending to activate a guy, deploy him prone.
Is the reason just to increase your flexibility there?
Exactly. So that you are not exposing yourself to like weird lines of fire and forcing yourself to take face-to-face roles you are not prepared to take.
Right.
So if this guy was standing, there would be no safe way for me to activate Sheshkin or Messer.
Yeah.
Without exposing him to like a Panzerfaust A row without face-to-face row.
Makes sense.
Okay, so now we have another specialist to go. This is this M-Drone. He is alright, he's like a backup specialist. All the attack will be here, but you want to have somebody on the other flank, maybe. So he might be quite alright here. I wouldn't want him deployed on the rooftop. I would rather have him deployed like behind the building. And the reason is that at some point, he's not an aero, he's a specialist. So at some point he wants to like get up and move to the middle. And it is much safer when you start behind the building than you are starting on the top of the building.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, what about the Taigas, maybe? So the Taigas are the sort of warbands, basically. So any army has warbands, like most of the armies have warbands, or troopers like performing similar role. So they are basically the screen that can protect your other troopers, as at least Taigas are this thing, and Gazis. And the offensive use of them usually, if they have a smoke throwing ability, then you want to offensively attack them back without behind cover, because then they can do their impetus move, not exposing themselves to AROs, and throw a smoke protecting other guys.
Right.
But with Taigas specifically, you don't have this consideration. You should just deploy them like almost on the line.
Right.
If you are attacking, maybe, just maybe, leave a guy to protect your vulnerable and important guys from like drop troopers.
Right. Okay.
So, yes.
I was just going to say, one of the useful tips there is that if you are running those impetuous smoke throwers like Ghazi or Morlocks or whatever else there is, you want to plan around that first impetuous movement. So, plan where you want them to be and then move them 4 inches backwards so that when you use that impetuous move, they're going to end up in the spot where you wanted. Or 6,
exactly.
if they move 6 or whatever, whatever.
Also, like with those warbands, you don't really want them placed like in this position, because then you are either wasting your impetus order and because you are being looked at, or you are risking it. So you want them tucked slightly away, or actually protecting an approach. So if this Taiga were prone here, that would be a much better protection from the approach from this area, but it wouldn't protect from the airborne deployment here. Also, this Taiga, if he's like just there, this also locks you from the possibilities somewhat.
Right.
So I would prefer him deployed similarly to the attacking pieces, like prone and tucked like behind cover. So then you can choose whether to spend his impetus or not.
Sure, that makes sense.
You want to have a choice, like always.
Right. So the most important thing that I guess you basically said for the Shazvasti side, if you're playing first, is make sure that you've deployed in a flexible enough way to give yourself choices about, who your fire team leaders are going to be, which direction you're going to go, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Right. Now, what about those kind of guys? So they are basically your DZ protectors. So this could be like a Gulam with a light shotgun. This could be Ikadron with a light flamer. This could be anything else, really. A cheap guy that is regular order and doesn't want to really move, but has some sort of template or a good weapon for protection the DZ. So you want him, basically you want to, since this is a repeater, so you want to spread out your hacking area, if you like. But I think like, because this nuke is a blind spot for your other guys, so this is a good spot for him.
Yep.
Because if your Harris is going to advance here, you can then maybe move him, and you have a repeater for guys that will appear here, and you have a flamer for the guy that will appear here.
Okay, so he can cover the backwards angle, right? If he...
Yeah, so one modification I would do to his positioning is to deploy him like parallel to the side of the table, so that he can see both ways. And what?
What is this?
I don't know. Salad snack. Stop it. Okay. I don't read this. Don't understand. Okay. So yeah, also deploying prone for the most part. And now to the camo tokens. Now this is basically a dead giveaway that this camo token is a chain of command, because he serves absolutely no purpose for the game. He's just tucked away in a quote-unquote safe spot. The problem I have with this spot is that this is the only spot available for him, like because for deployment 2, so he cannot deploy any further, but he can be seen from here. So this is not really a safe spot. So if you want him really safe, you should maybe consider him your rear guard. So he's somewhere and using like Saad or somebody else told the 360 visor of the camo. So
Right.
He could be deployed here maybe, or even here.
So camo has 360 vision, right? So you can leverage that.
Yeah. Before you reveal, camo has basically a 360 visor.
Right.
So if he is like really important for your plan, you don't want to invest him as much. Like this is your like safety insurance, because if Shishkin dies, you go if loss of lieutenant, and you want to actually play with Shishkin. Maybe now much less than it was before, but yeah. So, but the other thing about him is he's a specialist. Chain of command is a neat specialist. So what he could be actually doing is lying prone here. And now you have to be careful with this positioning of the taiga, because what you don't want to do is spend an impetus, move through there, and eat a missile on the way.
Gross. Yeah.
Yeah. So you like if you have an important camo guy, you have to consider like your impetus guys to not move within 2 inches of him.
Yeah.
Now this guy, on the other hand, he's a bit of a wild card in this list, because we are talking about the attacking car is like this is like the only attacking pieces this army has. There's also a Caliban with Spitfire. And this is for deployed guy that can do stuff in melee and can Spitfire stuff and has MSV, so he's pretty good at dealing with stuff, especially like midfield camo. Unfortunately, this army has little midfield camo, but when you are deploying first, you don't really know much about it. So I would consider this guy as the reserve for this army. So if you are going first, this is your actually the attacking piece that will actually benefit the most from being kept in reserve.
What's the reason for that?
He has a limited range, and he has therefore deployment 8 inches, so he can actually leverage this to achieve
Right.
different positions,
Uh-huh.
and then engage targets in his good range while avoiding other targets.
So
So yeah.
yeah, so because of the forward deployment, he has like a bunch of different options for where he can go. So that's a good reason to hold him back. And on top of that, the Spitfire range bands are a little bit limited, so it really pays off to kind of get a really clear idea of where you want him to be.
Yes, he's also pretty squishy. So you
Well,
really want to leverage all the mods you have.
he starts off pretty squishy, but yeah, sure,
Yes.
sure.
Yes. So yeah, so like this is a cool position for him because it allows you to get another angle than your Harris,
Hmm.
because this Harris will have a hard time getting there.
Right.
So I would still consider like this position better than this
Hmm.
position
Okay.
for him, because then he just doubles up the same thing that Shishkin does.
Right, so you've made sure that all of your aggressive pieces aren't on the same side. You don't want to just cover one side of the board.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay, so now we have corrected some mistakes in the deployment. Do you have any questions right now or like suggestions?
Anything that we've like missed or we could do better?
Okay.
I have one.
Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought one interesting conversation that we could have is about the different design philosophies that go into the maps and end up affecting deployment.
Hmm.
I need
And
more.
Sure. Yeah, I maybe your experience has been different, but for me, I feel like there's usually two different mentalities when it comes to making maps. One of them tends to be equal sides but different, and then
Hmm.
the other one is one side is stronger than the other. Do
Hmm.
you feel that you experienced that?
Well, to be honest, the the actual mm, like actually the side being stronger is subjective and depends on the army and the player.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Like
so,
there are some that have over the positions for like the snipers like seeing a bit too much, or the approaches are a bit too open. But there are many maps that when you look at the deployment zones, you see, oh, okay, so this side is better. But then when it comes to the armies and you face Ariadna or like Hossein Baram or Shazvastis or the more infiltrated armies, they might differ,
mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
assumption.
Right. And so, I guess my question will then go toward: Are there, is there like a small checklist of things that players should look out for when trying to determine the weight of a deployment zone? And like, is there one or two things they should look out for more so than anything else when trying to decide if a deployment zone is strong or weak? And then my
Mm-hmm.
second question for you would be, is there like a short sentence that we can provide for the different factions in regards to things to worry about?
Hmm.
For example, the Fidei experience with Hawk Islam or with an impersonator from Toha,
Hmm.
etc., etc.
Well, I think that's a bit above our pay grade, like for this episode. I think we need to like this was supposed to be a bit more like focused on the basic things, and this you are asking for a very general things. I am not really prepared to give you an answer right now.
Okay, yeah,
I can say something to that. Could I chime in there? Because I've been thinking about a certain thing a whole lot, which is active turns using coordinated orders. Perzan actually spoke to this a little bit. Is like if the field is very open and you're putting out a sniper, one thing that the opponent can do if they're smart, and it's a thing you can do in the game, and every army can do this, it doesn't matter what list you bring, can do a coordinated order and throw 5 dice at it.
Mhm.
So, like, if you're taking one sniper, you better put it in a spot where they're going to be on their -6 with their
Right.
combis,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Or like look out for one, like the smart thing that for them to do at it at that point, if they're not going to do that, would be like throw a tag at it, which honestly is still probably better to do a coordinated order sometimes, because like you can make the face to face weird.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely a really good point, and like as Perzan said, when you've got your ARO pieces, you don't want them too exposed, because if they can be seen from too many angles, it makes those coordinated orders like trivially easy to pull off. Really, really simple.
Yeah, like it was with this Q drone. Like this was a spot good for a sniper, but still this sniper would be vulnerable for the coordinated attack. The sniper would have a better chance of survival because of ranges than the Q drone, especially like from this angle. But still, like from this sniper spot, sorry. If you really want it, I think this one is better because it doesn't see this whole angle. But let's say if the Q drone were towards the center, like if it were just here, then it would have more limited lines of fire. So you don't want them like looking like when you are deploying long range aero pieces, it is often like the gut feeling of especially newer players to just deploy them in positions that are looking into the enemy DZ. And that's it might work 1 or 2 times if you are like looking at I don't know, a guy that the opponent is feels like he's compelled to actually activate, but he might not activate the guy. He might activate another guy, just go around and just shoot you from the other angle, or he might throw a coordinate at you with other guys, or he might just use one order to do with you. Because if you are deploying already looking into your enemy's deployment zone, this means that he doesn't need to spend any orders to engage you.
Right. Yeah, and then like
And
obviously he can just dice you as well. You know, like even if you're a mimetism -6 sniper, he can just throw like an MSV HMG at you, and that's that. It's an order or 2 orders.
Yeah, like of course there are always like considerations. I'm a strong like I'm basically against like deploying those like DZ to DZ arrow pieces, but every now and then when I have like let's say Lemwet, I still do this just because like he's so obnoxious that he forces the enemy to deal with him. And when you have like let's say a Varuna sniper in the link team,
right,
you might still want to deploy him like overlooking the most of the board and like into the DZ because just obnoxious. And it might still take many orders from your opponent to destroy him.
But just to come back like very, very quickly to Dee's question, which was about factions, I agree that I don't think we can cover all the different factions now, but in terms of some general tips, like the first thing that Perzan spoke about is this idea of being able to cover multiple angles into your deployment zone, which is really important because it covers you from impersonators and camouflage. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is to make sure that you have multiple paths out of your deployment zone, which means that if 1 or 2 of them are covered by strong snipers or ARO pieces that you can't deal with, you still have options, right? So you don't want to put all of your list on one flank or the other. Okay, sometimes you want to do that, but it's rare. It's very rare.
Basically,
it's rare.
don't want to be bottlenecked.
Yeah.
If you are all into one spot and then enemy has like this strong obnoxious arrow piece, and then you are just
it's very hard.
Trying to break the brick wall. No.
Right.
Well, thank you guys for answering my question. I really appreciate it.
We've spent quite a lot of time on this. Is it worth just going over the Hackers Lum side a little bit and looking at the objective-based gameplay?
Yeah, so I think like objective-based gameplay, yeah. So I think we are most focused on like just deployment in this instance, like first or second, because the HeadChime is deploying for going second, and he's deploying knowing the Shazvasti deployment. So he can counter, the player can counter the pieces and approaches. Like there are some, I would not go into as much detail. I would just maybe correct some things. Let's say you have a link team here with a lieutenant in the back,
Right.
and this guy is the lead leader, and he's say a pretty weak guy. He can be stormed through here and put a template on him. And then a good thing about this link team, some armies have is the number 2. But if he goes to here, then this guy is out of range for this lieutenant.
Right.
So this means that this guy dying will, and possibly this guy dying, will just limit it to 2 guys. So just small, like thinking about it, like what happens if those guys, if the link leader dies, if you have like a number 2, and then maybe like positioning this guy like 1 inch to the left would already give you a huge advantage defensively.
Right.
Another thing is like deploy your hard pieces with shotguns like up front, but don't deploy them like overlooking like to here. Tuck them away slightly.
Just tuck them in
so
a
that
bit.
Yeah. Another thing is there is like if you have like this Harris is deployed very offensively. This is your offensive Harris. This player used the forward deployment of Yara to deploy them there, but this is a good position to advance from. But it might not be a very good position to deploy them, like especially like this. So Yara should be tucked back so that he is not like as easily seen from here. And also Doctor could be looking back, also to double back looking here. And this gas is a neat touch. Like if you have an MSV guy, it might be any range, like Mukhtar, Yara, or even like maybe not Varuna Sniper because they don't have smoke, but Haidao, something like this. And if you have a cheap warband with smoke, you can really protect your guy and your Harris or Link just by deploying this guy to be seen first. So if you consider like approaching from here to engage them, the first model that will be seen will be this Ghazi. You can still just poke out the corner and see them both, but if this happens, this guy will throws a smoke unopposed. This is an important thing. If you just want to protect the MSV, throw a smoke in such a way that it will not block line of fire to your guy. And then, even if they shoot you, you are still throwing the smoke on like 15 or 16. And then this means that the MSV guy will only need to suffer 1 round of shooting. This might be enough, but it might not be enough. And if he is already in smoke, then he can just forfeit any loss or like shoot through smoke, whatever. Just protect himself.
Right. So any of your smoke throwers can be used to protect like the rest of your guys, I guess.
Exactly. And you can even deploy them like in a very obnoxious spot, like here. Like if you really are concerned about like survivability of your smoke throwers, like this is a bad spot for like long term because he will die, and you want him to be like have a chance to survive and make your opponent work for it. But like deploying him here, like anything flinches, he just throws smoke.
Right.
Then his job is done. I think it was more prevalent in N3 when you had where you had like more than 15 models, and now every such model is pretty
a bit more precious.
worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we started streaming, you were saying that you might want to choose this side that the HeadChime player is on because of the objectives.
Yes, exactly. Like this side has eyes on all the objectives from one angle or another, whereas the other side only really from the DZ sees this deployment, this
Those two.
this thing and this thing. And these can be easily reached from different angles, like from behind this building. Whereas the blue player needs to work much more
Right.
to actually get to the objectives.
Mhm.
Now you can abuse this deployment, like with this building, like cutting line of fire with your say mine layers. So like this positioning is very bad because like one warband that just goes there can like clear the mine, and maybe if this guy reveals or like maybe discover shoots, you can template them both. So you want to layer them. So like this guy deployed here and the mine deployed like here is already better, even though it can be like seen from like quite a while. It is still like an order that needs to be spent. Can improve it slightly by just careful positioning. So now this mine still protects this console and this console, and it protects this console less because you can actually touch the other thing, I think, out of range of the mine. No, you should be contacted by the mine. Another thing, you have this link team protecting like this console and this console. It is a bit exposed, like from this rooftop you can see it, but it doesn't really matter that much. What you can do is layer another set of arrows, like on the approach to your link team. So those dynamis are doing that. But on the other hand, they might also be protecting your consoles. So it depends like what they are armed with, but I actually like to deploy like such cheap infiltrators like here if they have a template.
Mhm.
So they just double up as a mine
Right.
basically.
Yeah. So those cheap infiltrators with templates, they're quite good at covering objectives, and if one side has quite an easy building or somewhere for them to hide behind, that can be one of your considerations for deployment.
Yes, like I would restrain from deploying all my camos on the rooftops because it also means that they cannot reach the ground very easily. And say this camo marker could be as well like deployed here. He would see pretty much the same, but he would be able to target models reaching this console with a template.
Right. So that gives him more options, I suppose.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, this guy, you need to think if you want to just deal with the sniper and like coordinate the sniper. But if you are going first, then yes, maybe deploying all those dynamis like on the rooftop so they have clear line of the sniper would be better. But like, I think like this dynamis more important role would be to actually protect you from like approach from this angle that would go to attack your guys.
Mhm. So generally, you can maybe use your camo to cover some of the forward approaches to your more squishy like fire teams and things, something like that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or do you think we're just about done?
I think like another consideration is just like this mission, like you have to like see and control the consoles. But another consideration is just how defensive your deployment zone is. So if one like you have an annihilation or a firefight or another mission that involves killing stuff, or basically any other mission that the opponent may just roll over you if you just choose badly and deploy badly. Then consider also when choosing deployment, either if you are going first or second, just the pure defensiveness. Because even if you are going first and you will have like this one attack piece or like this one Harris that will go there, then there are still like 12 other pieces that need to be safe when the enemy turn comes. So look at the angles that models can be seen from. And also, if the mission involves any like going places and clicking things and picking things, don't really get yourself enchanted by the rooftops. Because the rooftops might seem like they are a safe spot, but they are very difficult to dismount and actually go somewhere.
Yeah, and I've been caught out by this personally so many times. Like, you look at a rooftop and it looks really great, and then you realize that your troops can't actually go anywhere, and it's kind of useless.
Yeah. Like,
so-
even if there are ladders, the models that are going on the ladders, they will be still exposed to plenty of arrows.
Right. Okay.
This deployment is actually a bit more defensive, just because it has a bit more scatter and a bit more nooks and crannies to put models.
Right.
And this side needs rooftops, because like the rest of it is pretty devoid of scatter.
So are you saying this side with more scatter, where the combined army is perhaps a bit easier to defend because of all the cover everywhere? Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah. So now you like this map presents this conundrum where you have to, when you are faced with like choosing the deployment zone, you have to consider A, the actual mission, and B, survivability. So this side is better for mission, but this side is better for survivability.
Sure. Cool.
Yeah, and every map can be read read in this way.
Right.
There are some maps that have the same thing on the same side. So one side is just majorly better just for the mission and survivability. And I feel personally that these are maps that need to be slightly tweaked to be better.
Okay. So it sounds like we've covered quite a lot. Would it be worth trying to sum things up just in a couple of sentences, or is that too ambitious?
No, please try.
All right. So we started off with the offensive side with your Shazvasti force, and we were saying it's important to position your troops such that you have choices in how you move them out of the deployment zone and who you pick to be fire team leaders. So if you leave a member of a fire team exposed, then you're kind of forced to activate them as the leader to face. So you might want to put them prone, for example, to stop that. You then spoke about... Sorry, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to add that I already spoke about some pieces that were reactive in their nature. So like the Q-drone. So the same things I spoke about Q-drone could be applied to just being deployed second.
Right.
So just not exposing.
Yeah. So not seeing too many different lines of fire, because that makes it very easy for your opponent to pick their best piece and take you out, or to coordinate and just shoot you from multiple angles. Remember, very importantly, even if you do have total reaction, you can't split your burst in the reactive turn, so you're still vulnerable to the coordinated order. You also spoke about leaving some troops facing backwards, because whilst only a couple of armies can deploy into your deployment zone, I think it's Ariadna and Nomads, I think. Combined. But there are plenty of options that can combat jump behind you anyway, so it's really important to cover the rear angle. I think then you kind of spoke about making sure that your attack pieces have choices in how they engage things. So you mentioned the Caliban with the Spitfire, and you said you might want to hold it back just so that you can see where your opponent puts their pieces and then kind of get the best angle on that. And then in terms of deploying for objectives, you spoke about choosing a side that has good access to the objectives, which might mean you've got kind of walls to hide behind, rooftops nearby, and that kind of thing. And then I think one of the other things you mentioned was comboing your smoke throwers with some of your other dudes, just to make sure that if something does come and take them on, you can get a smoke grenade down to protect them. And finally, making sure that your fire teams aren't so spread out that if you lose one or two members, the fire team will just break, because you can't physically, pick a good leader anymore, because they're so spread out from each other. Have I missed something? Oh yes, I have missed something. Use camouflage markers sometimes to cover the flanks and make the approaches into your deployment zone much harder, I think.
Yeah, and also the rooftops.
and always the
The rooftops are
Yeah.
no, the rooftops are not always the best place.
Right. So important to remember that blindly going for rooftops is not usually the best kind of idea. They're quite restrictive in movement and they're quite exposed.
Exactly.
Cool. So before we stop it there for today, are there any other questions from people? Doesn't sound like it. Cool. Alright,
Okay,
I
thanks.
will stop the stream then.